At exactly 3:42 a.m. local time, 90 miles southwest of Tehran, something happened that hadn't occurred since Operation Opera in 1981. American military aircraft struck a nuclear enrichment facility on sovereign territory without a declaration of war. Not a research reactor, not a suspected site, an active underground facility processing uranium-235 to 60% enrichment, 12 days away from weapons-grade material. 4 F-35A Lightning IIs dropped 8 GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrators from 40,000 feet. Each bomb weighed 30,000 pounds. Each carried 5,300 pounds of high explosive, designed to punch through 200 feet of reinforced concrete before detonating. The Fordow fuel enrichment plant sat 300 feet underground, carved into solid rock, protected by multiple layers of hardened concrete and steel. Iranian engineers believed physics made it untouchable. American weapons designers believed physics just required bigger hammers. Someone's understanding of impenetrable was about to be corrected. Iran's nuclear program believed they'd achieved strategic invulnerability, bury the enrichment cascades deep enough, and even American bunker busters couldn't reach them. The Pentagon Strategic Command believed they were about to demonstrate why deep enough is a relative term when you're dropping bombs that weigh more than most cars. Both sides understood that crossing 60% enrichment was the red line. Only one side had run the physics calculations on what happens when 42,400 pounds of precision-guided ordnance arrived simultaneously at terminal velocity. The GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator wasn't supposed to exist in operational inventory yet. The United States had accelerated development starting in 2007 specifically for deeply buried hard targets in Iran and North Korea. Northrop Grumman delivered 20 units between 2011 and 2012. Length 20.5 feet, diameter 31.5 inches. The weapon uses GPS-INS guidance accurate to 6 feet and a delayed action fuse that triggers detonation only after penetration. Testing at White Sands Missile Range demonstrated successful penetration of 200 feet of 5,000 psi reinforced concrete. The bombs loaded onto 4 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers at Whiteman Air Force Base on March 8 had been upgraded to the Mod 1 configuration in 2023, enhanced penetration capability, improved fusing, better guidance against underground facilities where GPS signals degrade. These weren't experimental weapons. They were physics problems solved with 30,000 pounds of tungsten carbide casing and high explosive. The Fordow facility wasn't built to be accessible. It was built to survive. Construction began in 2006 inside Fordow Mountain near Qom. 2 enrichment halls, each housing 1,044 IR-1 centrifuges, later upgraded to faster IR-2M and IR-6 models. The entire complex sat beneath 300 feet of rock and concrete. Entrance through a single tunnel system with blast doors designed to seal in under 30 seconds. Air filtration systems rated for chemical and biological attack. Independent power generation. The International Atomic Energy Agency had been monitoring the site since 2009, but monitoring isn't intervention. By March 2026, Fordow was processing uranium hexafluoride gas through 3,000 advanced centrifuges, enriching from 3.67% to 60% purity at a rate of 9 kilograms per month. At that rate, achieving the 90% weapons-grade threshold required 14 additional days of processing. Inside the facility, 167 Iranian nuclear scientists and technicians worked rotating 12-hour shifts. They had air raid sirens, they had blast doors, they had 300 feet of mountain above their heads. What they didn't have was experience with what happens when penetration weapons designed to kill Soviet leadership bunkers arrive in saturation attack. The F-35A versus hardened underground facilities, fifth-generation stealth versus Cold War bunker architecture, a platform designed to operate undetected in contested airspace versus a facility designed when Iran's primary threat was Israeli F-16s carrying 2,000-pound bombs. The GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator delivers 21,000 foot-pounds of kinetic energy on impact before the explosive even detonates. That's like dropping a fully loaded bus from a 10-story building 8 times simultaneously against a target that assumed 200 feet of rock and concrete provided immunity. Here's the thing about authoritarian regimes operating clandestine nuclear programs. They don't calculate international response the way rational actors do. Tehran had weathered sanctions for decades. They'd survived assassinations of nuclear scientists, cyber attacks on centrifuges, and diplomatic isolation. The calculation was simple: achieve nuclear breakout capability before Western military intervention becomes inevitable. Produce enough fissile material for a weapon, and negotiating leverage transforms overnight. The supreme leader needed a victory. Domestic protests were escalating. Regional influence was waning. A nuclear deterrent represented strategic security and regime survival. Desperation follows its own terrible logic. 03:18 hours. Detection window opens. 4 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers departed Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri 18 hours earlier. Each carried 2 GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrators in rotary launcher assemblies. The aircraft flew south across the Atlantic, refueled over Diego Garcia, then turned north into Pakistani airspace at 50,000 feet. Iranian air defense radar detected nothing. The B-2's radar cross-section is 0.001 square meters. To ground-based radar, it's invisible unless it wants to be seen. The bombers approached from the east, exploiting radar gaps in Iran's coverage where mountainous terrain creates blind spots. What Tehran's air defense network didn't know, American signals intelligence had mapped every radar site, every SAM battery, every communications node in Iranian airspace over 15 years of collection. The flight path through Iranian airspace had been wargamed 47 times. Success probability 96.4%. The missing 3.6% wasn't Iranian defenses, it was weather and mechanical failure rates. 03:26 hours. The B-2s reached their release point 90 miles east of Fordow at 40,000 feet. GPS coordinates locked: 34.9533 degrees north, 50.9797 degrees east. 8 GBU-57 MOPs dropped from internal weapons bays in 6-second intervals. The bombs entered ballistic trajectory. GPS INS guidance systems activated. Time to impact, 74 seconds. Iranian air defense radar detected the bombs 31 seconds in flight. By then, it didn't matter. You can't intercept what you can't reach. 03:29 hours. Fordow's air raid warning activated. 167 personnel inside the facility had 45 seconds to reach hardened shelter areas. Emergency protocols called for sealing blast doors and activating overpressure systems. The facility's defensive design assumed conventional 2,000-pound bombs. The emergency shelter areas were rated to survive direct hits from weapons that size. The bombs descending toward them were 15 times heavier. 03:30 hours. First impact. GBU-57 No. 1 struck 23 feet from the tunnel entrance. The tungsten carbide casing remained intact. Fuse delay calculated optimal detonation depth. The bomb detonated 110 feet underground. 5,300 pounds of high explosive created an overpressure wave propagating through solid rock at 23,000 feet per second. The mountain moved. Seismic stations 140 miles away registered a 4.2 magnitude event. 03:30 plus 3 seconds. Bombs 2 and 3 impacted within 12 feet of each other, directly above Enrichment Hall A. The first penetrator reached 180 feet depth before detonation. The second reached 165 feet. The explosions fractured the reinforced concrete ceiling above the centrifuge cascades. The centrifuges were spinning at 90,000 RPM. They're designed to tolerate vibration from earthquakes. They're not designed to tolerate the ceiling collapsing on them. 1,200 centrifuges disintegrated in the overpressure wave. Uranium hexafluoride gas vented into the chamber. The automated safety systems detected catastrophic pressure loss and initiated emergency shutdown. Irrelevant, the facility had ceased to exist as a functional enrichment plant. 0330 plus 6 seconds. Bombs 4, 5, and 6 struck Enrichment Hall B. The targeting was surgical, impact points calculated to create overlapping destruction zones. The penetrators arrived in sequence, each detonation weakening the rock for the next. The third bomb reached 220 feet depth. When it detonated, the shock wave